Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cooking with Big Mark.
Good day, folks. Well, today we're going to talk about, believe it or not, seaweed. And in particular seaweed, which is the sort of the largest subgroup of the seafood world, or seaweed world, I should say, is kelp. And if anybody of my confreres years ago would think I'd be giving a yelp out about kelp, they would think I would need some extra special help. It's just having lived on the seashore all my life, I always had seafood. I've never thought of eating it at all. And it's sort of like even because one of the big uses of seaweed is sushi. And I think even back with that, the joke years ago for me, and what my idea of sushi was, people says, what do the Italians call sushi? And they say bait. Well, this is about that. That's about what my opinion of it was as well. So this is a big sort of turnaround for me. But it's something full of nutrients. And as I say, most of the seaweed that we got now comes from Japan or some Asian origin. And most of it comes in dried, and I'm sure it possibly, preserved. It's got a lot of wonderful nutrients in it. And they talk about a lot of the Japanese diet. They say 25% of the Japanese diet it involves seaweed in some form or other. And so, but I'm talking about a particular kind of seaweed, and that's giant kelp. And I'm talking about a particular kind, and that's the fresh kelp from Maine, which is a brand new thing. I was saying back in the old days, we used to, as kids during the war, which would have been 2, 3, and 4, we used to get on the beach, and every Monday afternoon around 3:30, this truck would pull up near our local little candy store on the beach. And we go take sea moss, which we used to collect. You get either dry or wet. You got one price for wet, one price for dry. And of course, that was just a fun thing. You get a few pennies or dimes or whatever. Then we go blow it in the little candy store with ice cream or tonic or something. But what they wanted this is again during the war, was to get iodine. Iodine is a big factor in seaweed. And of course, when the war ended, our ability to sell seaweed off the beach stopped as well. So I haven't really dealt with it since then, but it's going to be a big part of our lives, I think, not my lives, but I think especially young people, it'll be a much bigger part of the diet, especially as we cut down on the use of meat and get into more of vegetables and vegan type dishes. The beauty of it is to grow it requires no fertilizer. It doesn't have any pesticides. It doesn't take up arable land. It helps out a lot of people. A lot of shellfish and things. There's a place for them to sort of hide under. It doesn't require fresh water, which is going to be another factor, especially with people with all these droughts that that we're getting. So it's really self-sustaining. And also, as I said, it provides a habitat for other kinds of things, especially shellfish. Asian kombu, which is a big part of is kelp, but it's a different type of kelp than the giant kelp. And so getting back to the main thing, what has happened up there is become a symbiotic relationship with the lobster business. And what happens is the lobster business runs really from end of May, June through November. And going out in the seas and being able to get the pots, and also the way that the animals themselves operate. So all of a sudden, they discovered that this kelp, which they seed up, they put small pieces on rope, and they drop it down in water, farming it, and just directly down under 4 to 8 feet under the surface. And of course, who has all the accoutrement to do that? The lobstermen. They got the buoys, they have the ropes, they haul their pots up. And so became a natural thing for them. So in November and December, they go out and they put these things out. and they usually along the shores and fairly secluded area if they can. And the darn stuff grows. In some cases, it can grow almost 2 to 3 feet in the course of a couple of days, and it develops these little kelp forests and everything with all the kelp going down. And come the end of March or April, they bring it up. They haul it up on the winch in their lobster boat, just like they do their pots. They shave it off, with a knife off the rope, just like you take the kernels of corn off a cob, and they put it right into a bucket. Off the boat it goes. They go in, they take it to this Atlantic coast special plant that operates in the late spring through early summer. And there they will wash the kelp and to get off any things that sand or other things that might get on it, and blanch it. And that ochre color or light brown color that you get now turns to green. And that is the kelp that we're talking about selling now. It's all its various forms. It's available in Whole Foods and other places. The other great thing about farming kelp is that it also takes, through photosynthesis, the same as plants, CO2 out of the air, carbon dioxide, which of course is our big problem in climate change. So that's going along the coast now. The kelp forest, the things that they're doing are going to help and aid and abet in that too. So those are all the factors pretty much about the kelp itself. Now, how do we relate it to food? Well, once it's blanched, as I said, it turns green. It's a lovely green color. Then you can slice it up in some cases into pasta, either like linguine or fettuccine or spaghetti sizes. And you can buy that Whole Foods, all the Whole Foods market have it now fresh. And I think some probably have it frozen as well. Then you deal with that the same as you would any pasta, any kind of sauce combination, or adjuncts that you want to add to it, you can do it. The other thing they do is make chips out of it. And you chip and dips, you take it and they fry it, and it becomes kelp chips, to have with your dip. It's also wonderful in soups to add. A lot of people have broths. The Koreans, for example, serve a broth on birthdays, which is a seaweed broth that's supposed to remind because of all the nutrients, to remind the birthday person of their mothers and how they gave nutrients. It's sort of a traditional thing they do to honor the parents on their particular birthdays. So the other thing, you'd be amazed at all the other things that you can do with it. You can season with it, put in small, things added to stocks or soups or anything else. You can make salads out of it. The same thing that you do with the little green pasta things is added into a salad. If you're having tacos per person, you've got, pico de gallo and you've got the green salsa. Now you can make a kelp sauce at the same thing or add it into the other sauces. And another unique thing I found they're doing with it is using, one of people's favorite cakes, a carrot cake. They do a kelp cake because it's the same thing, or mix it either in with the carrot or use it by itself. It gets some of the same physical properties of a carrot once it gets wet, and mixed in the cake. So those are all the ways that you can use the kelp, and there are myriads of recipes you can find now. The big thing that I'm talking about and proposing is to always use it naturally, fresh from the sea, not the dried or the other type of thing. I saw Legal Seafoods had a very special dish where they took a fillet of fish and wrapped it in the kelp, like you'd wrap a banana leaf or a grape leaf around something and steamed it, baked it in the oven. And so it became a natural steam process. So those are all the things that you can do with kelp. And I think it's going to play a bigger part in your lives than it has in mine. But there's no question with the way, how much food we're going to be taking from the sea in the coming years, because it's down there and it's got all the qualities and nutrients that everything else does. And right now it has a fabulous use, and we never knew about as a thickener, especially in ice creams, toothpaste, shampoos, all these type of things that have kelp in it, in one variety or another. So try it out, investigate. I'm not so sure how much I'll do, but I found it a fascinating subject at any rate. And that's the story.
All right. Very interesting. Yeah, one thing to note with the dried is it's often highly seasoned. And if you're making rolls at home, you want to make sure you get one that's just the neutral dried if you're going to go the dried route. But clearly there's a lot of ways to work with fresh. And I think that lobsterman synergy thing where they're doing the kelp in the off season is really cool. It's also oxygenating the ocean. So we're going to stick with the theme a little bit today, unusually for recent times. And we have the Tozai Snow Maiden. This is named after a koi that lived at the base of a mountain in the icy waters for 226 years. So this is a tribute to said koi. And I'm doing a little, I guess almost riddling of it because it's coarsely filtered, so there's little bits of rice in there, and that's why it looks so creamy. It almost looks like an horchata or something like that visually.
Now this is sake, right?
Mm-hmm. So just to sort of, for those who are not regular sake drinkers or are used to only enjoying it warm in a Japanese restaurant, the finer sakes are always served cold, traditionally in a ceramic container, but we don't have a ceramic sake cup, so I'm using a wine glass. But you're going to see this beautiful milkiness from the rice solids that are in it. And sake is often referred to as rice wine, but really, if you were going to draw an analogy, it's really rice beer. And if you're going to draw further refinement on that analogy, where beer is concerned, it's a two-step process. Once you work with your malt and then you ferment it. And in sake making, you're literally taking your rice, you're steaming it, you're adding the koji, which is this fungus which strips away at the rice and allows you to ferment it and extract the sugars. And in terms of grades of sake, you have your junmais. This is a junmai nigori, which means a cloudy pure rice sake. If you were to add a little bit of alcohol, which people sometimes do, it's no longer junmai, but the category names are the same. So you would have, if you added alcohol to your sake, it's no longer junmai, so ginjo or daiginjo. But if it is the pure rice, it would be junmai ginjo, and junmai daiginjo, and that corresponds to the amount of polishing of the rice that you do. So for instance, this guy has had 30% of the outer bran part of the rice polished off. A ginjo would be 60% left, and then a daiginjo would be 50% left. And if you think about the umami in seafood, your sakes where there's less polishing going on are going to be creamier and more bread-like, more yeasty. And the more that you strip away at the individual rice grain, is going to become much more floral. If you're talking about a ginjo or daiginjo, or junmai ginjo or junmai daiginjo, where it's going to be much more floral, cleaner, much more suited to more delicate food. Whereas this, you could have this with even like great fried shellfish. This would be delicious. Also really good with spicy food for whatever reason. I'll give this a smell. You do get an immediate, this is like smelling bread that's proofing. Not proofing, when it sits in the fridge. And oh, that's so good. You really get an incredibly creamy texture. It's almost like a half and half kind of weight. And you can see in the glass, you're getting little bits of rice are forming a layer on there. So something different to add to your alcohol repertoire. They usually come in around 15, 16%. So it's a little bit more alcoholic. It's certainly not a session beverage, but if you had some lovely fried shellfish or heartier kinds of sushi, like the eel sushi, the unagi preparation would be fabulous with this. And also desserts, interestingly enough, because the texture is so creamy. So this has
Are
been.
are there any straight distillates or clear sakis or sakis?
Most of them are clear. Most of them are clear. This is just the cloudy style is the Nagori, and that just means they've filtered the rice less. You know, like classically, here comes the garbage trucks. Classically, it is completely clear. And the last sakis that we've tasted on the show have been the clear style, so I wanted to branch into something different.
And do they make many mixed drinks out of them?
I would be less inclined to use this style in a mixed drink just because it's kind of, it has a lot of its own chutzpah going on, then it might not play well with others. But the non-cloudy sakis are incredibly great for cocktails. And yes, it's higher alcohol than wine, but it's a lot less alcohol than vodka or rum or any of those. So you can do, a variation on all sorts of things. You could have, the clear sake and soda. You could use it like vodka and at a much lower ABV, and still
That's
get
what I was wondering about.
Yeah, really clean, lovely flavor. It adapts very well to fruit syrups, fruit juices. Taste great with it, especially if you're dealing with a higher polish on it. So.
Okay, well, good.
All right, so we've had a little fun with kelp today, a little cloudy sake. Thank you for joining us as always. Thank you, Dad.
Bye-bye, Mikey.
All right.